everyone. Welcome to Voluntary Virtues Vodcast. This is Mike Shanklin. Today we're having a special show. It's not just me talking. Actually, we have a debate going on today. It's Chris Hamer, anti-feminist Chris Hamer, versus feminist Anabell Fedorko. You guys say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, and I'm gonna let you guys fight over who goes first, just on introductory. So I just want you to explain who you are, where you came from, like keep it 2 minutes or less, and then we'll go into the actual intro for the debate.
Chris, go ahead.
Okie dokie. Hi, I'm Chris. I am an anarcho-capitalist, which of course is a bit of a redundant title, but there you go. And I am an anti-feminist. Does not make me a men's rights activist. Individuals have rights, though not under the state. Whole different thing. But, yeah, now I got here where I am today because I stumbled across a lovely video with a sort of Barbie doll-looking young lady where she talked about having a male castration day. And I'm like, what? Not awesome. Initiation of force came to mind immediately. And then from there, I got led to people like Girl Rights What and got opened up to this world of feminism. And I've never once came across a feminist in the 30 different flavors of definitions that comes with feminism that is not, at the end of the day, a female gender supremacist or women go first. Now, sure, there are some people who are not, but I've yet to find it. Maybe today will be that day. Maybe today the light will shine upon me, and I will see the error of my narrow vision. But that's me, summarized. A few minutes left.
No, thank you very much, Chris. Anabell, go ahead and give us a little intro on you.
Thank you. I am Anabell Fedorko, and I am a feminist. I consider myself an anarcho-feminist. I got into the feminist movement first before I was introduced with anarchy earlier this year, and I started with a friend of mine a feminist and intellectual empowerment website and online magazine and Facebook page, which kind of talked about different issues that really kind of sparked our interest and curiosity, and it's kind of really shown us how to research different things and really kind of get involved and empowered, and it's been quite the intellectual journey. And Chris isn't the first anti-feminist that I've come across, so I look forward to this discussion.
Yeah, so do I. I'm glad it could be hosted here on Voluntary Virtues. I obviously think this is something that needs to be delved into much deeper. So let's start on that. Earlier on, I did a private coin toss, even more private than the Federal Reserve. And Anabell went ahead and got the first say, so she's going to have the intro here, and then Chris, you just follow up right afterwards, and try and keep it under 10 minutes. I'm going to have a little clock here, so we're going to start at. I'll give you another minute. So it says 6:33 here. We'll go till 6:44. Anabell, the floor is yours.
All right. I'm just going to kind of talk about what feminism kind of means and the actual definition and different kind of ways that it's conceived. And Chris, I am going to use a few examples that I pulled from your YouTube videos or some chats that I've spoken to you with. Feminism is a movement that's been evolving and growing for decades. It's covered a variety of issues from land ownership to voting to equal pay. Before I explain what the movement of feminism stands for, I'm going to go over the preconceived ridiculous stereotypes, which I know that my opponent swears by. There are two quotes specifically that I'm going to note from Facebook that Chris Hamer said as he defines feminism. One of which, feminism is an envious ideology stuck in a grass is always greener mindset, wherein no matter what you give to it except possible for the majority best in society, it will never be satisfied. I will go over this later with the actual ideology. My personal favorite, however, is feminism. Regardless of whatever 30 different flavors of feminism you identify with, none have ever been more than female gender supremacists. Historically or currently makes no difference, which he actually mentioned just before in his introduction. He emphasizes the fem in the word to better enhance his argument. First off, the movement of feminism started in the Industrial Revolution, where the work branched away from farming, where it was equal, to men working in the sprouting cities and factories. This caused a gender divide in society when women were expected to stay at home and care for the children while men went to work and made the money. This led to women becoming completely dependent on the men, When women tried to break away of the social norms, she was shunned or imprisoned in a mental institution for being hysterical or a problem. It then grew to allow women the right to vote, so on and so forth. This does not spell out that women think they're better than men. They want to be recognized and brought to the table to sit with everyone else in an equal setting. Other statements have been made, not necessarily by Chris, but in general, that feminazis are the idea that feminists hate men and are super judgmental to people who aren't feminists. This stereotype depicts feminists as Nazi-esque women who demand strict adherence to a belief that men should not be doing things for women since it's their way of asserting their dominance over them, and essentially everything a man does is stomping on women and promoting rape culture. First off, this is called a stereotype for a reason. If I were to assume that all Asian people are good at math, it's disrespectful and incorrect. There are, of course, some that fit the stereotype, but it's only inept to only ascertain that ideology. If you are buying into the feminazi bullshit, then you probably think that feminists are big, hairy lesbians that don't shave and don't believe in bras because they're the man-made underwire prison of society. I'm a feminist. I'm also an anarchist. I shave my legs along with 80% of other body surface areas. I wear a much too uncomfortable bra. I paint my nails regularly. I wear makeup. I'm sex positive. I'm pro-choice. The superior description that I found to explain my view of feminism, or flavor, consists of the attempt to change legal systems in order to eliminate class privileges and gender privileges and to ensure that individuals have equal rights, including an equal claim under the law to their own persons and property. I encourage women to take full responsibility for their lives. I oppose government intervention into choices adults make with their own bodies because it contends such interference creates a coercive hierarchy, such as patriarchy. I do not think that women are better than men, different of course, for obvious reasons, but not better. I support the transgender community and their rights as an equal. I certainly support equality between heterosexual and homosexual. Guess what? I'm still a feminist. J.D. Anderson is quoted saying, "Feminism isn't about making women stronger. Women are already ready strong. It's about changing the way the world perceives that strength." There's a bigger cause here to talk about than to make offensive comments and jokes. Body image, gender heteronormativity, and rape culture, which I know is a particular favorite topic for Chris. This is what we need to have an intellectual conversation about, not the idiocy of name-calling and assumptions. I want to briefly touch upon some things that I came across your YouTube channel, Chris. There are two particular videos that I watched. I took your advice and did my own little research about your YouTube videos. There were two that I found really interesting. Both were a response to an article written by a feminist blog on WordPress called Eve Bit First. The article specifically is called "Men Support Rape If ... and proceeded to list about 20 actions that would inherently support rape culture, even though it's through tacit compliance. This woman is a great example of radical feminism. I know a fair amount of feminists, and the large majority would agree with me, that she fell off the cliff of insanity. She fits into the stereotype of man-hating ridiculousness. Her viewpoint contradicts what feminism stands for, and I disagree with it 98% of it. I digress, though. The post did infuriate me because a focus of mine is rape culture, and the only thing that I agree with her is that, and I quote, "Sexual violence is perpetuated by society as normal, biological, acceptable, funny, or not that big a deal." You note that you only heard 2 rape jokes, one of which came from a feminist in one of your videos. You're not the end-all and be-all, so just because you've only heard 2 doesn't necessarily mean that only 2 exist out there. Who said it is irrelevant. One you note from the movie Ted, where a character walks down the street and says, "I'll walk, and if I get raped, it'll be my fault for what I'm wearing," which happened to be a t-shirt and jeans. You respond with, and I quote, "Implying rape happens as a result of what a woman is wearing is illogical, therefore funny." I agree with that statement, with the exception that it's funny. The act of rape cannot be justified by what a woman is wearing, but it's brought into legal cases all the time, as well as a detailed account of the victim's sexual history. Rape is a problem whether the victim is man or woman. But if a man is raped, is he asked these same questions? No, he's not, because it's completely irrelevant to the situation. I could talk about rape culture and victim blaming all day, because as much as people try to brush it off, it's there. So basically, in conclusion, if you want to research feminism and read only what extremists and radical feminists say, and not research the full cause and general views, then you shouldn't state your opinion. It is true that there are many different kinds of feminism, and it will keep evolving, but the stand for equal rights is not something to spit on. Assuming that all feminists think that they are better than anyone else says more about you than it does about me. If you want to spend all your time arguing that if it was for equal rights, then it would be called something else other than feminism, I think you should get a hobby.
All right. Thank you, Anabell. I really want to thank you for giving us that heartfelt speech. It was wonderful. Let's move on over to Chris real quick. Now, Chris, you got 10 minutes to do an intro, and then I'm going to give you an extra 5 minutes to rebuttal also what she had just said, and then we'll go back to Anabell. Sound good?
That sounds great.
Go for it, buddy.
Hello. So, yes, anti-feminist. Let's really maximize our 10 minutes. First off, society is not geared towards the benefit of men, not historically and not currently. Men are seen as disposable, which I'm not saying is right or wrong, just inevitable given how we developed as a species. To go back to some Titanic-esque examples, if the ship is going down, it is women and children first. This is also true in our modern day. When a plane decides to hit birds and fall into the Hudson Bay, when order is maintained, women and children first. Now, this isn't always the case. If order is not maintained, if it's all, Darwin sort of free-for-all, men will live more, thankfully to our God-given evolutionary advantage of pushing people out the way. But when the crew maintains order, when society steps into the chaos and says, here's how it's going to be, men don't come first, even though we're supposed to be awesome, even though we're supposed to be number one, from some patriarchy mindset. Nope, left to die. Now, statistically, men are more likely to be victims of violence. From the Bureau of Justice Statistics, murder, assault, robbery, all more likely to happen to men than women. And yet, nobody seems to give as much credence as when a woman is put in danger. There's a show called What Would You Do on ABC, hosted by a man who's charming, yet his name I cannot properly pronounce, where they did a social experiment whereby a man was seen harassing and doing physical things to a woman in public. The swift negative societal response was not at all shocking. What was shocking was when they switched those genders around, when it was the woman being violent against the man, the sort of oppressed class versus the oppressor class. How did society react? Well, shockingly enough, society didn't seem to care that much. It's not that not anyone didn't care. Individuals, of course, will be led to their own conclusions, and some actually did. Some called the police. Some actually said, hey, stop doing that. But a large majority attempted to ignore it or were in solidarity with the woman, just assuming that, hey, he probably did something wrong. That, to me, is akin to saying she was asking for it in rape, which, of course, is of course negative and never seen as a justification. Even one person who walked by was a police officer who said, oh, what they were having, that's a tip. But if he had been doing it to her, I would have handled business. You don't put your hands on a woman. Thank you, officer of the law. Now, as another thing, men and kids don't have a great relationship. I mean, on an airplane, for example, if I sit down, I'm just chilling, and an unaccompanied minor is sat in one of the two seats in my little 3-seat row, I will be asked to move, and if possible, replaced with a female passenger. That is what the privilege of my genitals buys me, assumed child molester. Even if all I'm doing is sitting on an airplane next to a window praying to whatever God there is that birds do not incapacitate our flight. And I could go on. I could talk about how in our civilized society, we don't have to deal with female genital mutilation. The suppressed class does not have to worry about having their genitals mutilated. If you're a baby born in this world, have done nothing short of cry, there is a knife coming at your penis in order to circumcise it. Which, I don't know. Where's the love? And, moving on. Now, what's interesting about violence against men and women is that women are more likely to have violence against them by someone who knows them as individuals, someone who knows them by the content of their character. whereas men are more likely to have violence done against them by a complete stranger, somebody who knows them for the surface level thing. And I find that very telling about our society. It's not about a man, who he is, what he believes, how he thinks. It's about whatever you happen to see about him, which is the opposite for violence against women. Now, I'm not saying violence against women is okay. I don't support violence, period, at an individual level. However, when 1 in 3 women are victims of violence from an intimate partner, which is bad, by the way, it is 1 in 3 according to the CDC, we have numerous domestic violence shelters. We have campaigns called Women Are Safe, etc., that come out to help women. But when 1 in 4 victims of intimate partner violence are men, we do not see the same societal response. We do not see that many domestic violence shelters catering to men. In fact, there have been cases where a man who has been a victim of such violence went to a domestic violence shelter and was pushed away because he's a man. They didn't see him as a victim. They didn't see him as a victim of this sort of really psychologically fueled aggression. They just said, oh, he has a penis, let him go. And that upsets me a little bit, this non-individualistic mindset. I mean, even in something like cancer, you know, we had breast cancer for the ladies and prostate cancer for the men. Now, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month was brought about in 1985. And, of course, we all know that lovely ribbon color, do we not? It's pink. You see it in the media. We see it in that car that's taking way too much time to make an order at McDonald's. It's everywhere. But prostate cancer awareness, is it as aware? It didn't get its own month till 2006, so the privilege-fueled gender didn't get any love for 21 years on a cancer issue. And raise your hands, anyone, if you can tell me, without Google searching, the ribbon color for prostate cancer. Yeah, I didn't know either. Don't feel ashamed. There's no media coverage. Nobody's putting that on the back of their cars. Men do not rank as high in needing to be taken care of. And it's light blue, for those of you curious. Now, that's pretty much what I want to talk about. I'd like to do my 5 minutes to rebut Anabell's points, if I may.
Go for it.
Outstanding. All right, so Anabell, you talk about how feminism is about equality, you know, attempt to change the legal system for equality for all people, right? That's fantastic. And yet none in your 10 minutes of talking did you talk about men's stuff. You brought up feminism helped out about female land ownership, voting, equal pay. Never mentioned what feminism has done for men, which I find interesting. Now, I can tell you some things feminism has done for men. During World War I, during the escalation and even involved with it, feminism had a bit of divide in their community. You know, because pacifism has always found a place in feminism, which is the only thing about feminism I can actually agree with. I'm very anti-war myself because the state uses it, but we'll get to that another day. Now, while some feminists were against the war for pacifist reasons, other feminists, both in the US and in the UK, supported the war, saber-rattling. Now, these feminists I find completely horrid. They were campaigning for the female right to vote, not campaigning for the female right to the draft, which is a quid pro quo. You have a say in your society, man, so you have to fight for your society. Not something that actually happens for women. And yet these feminists were supporting a war that featured a male-only draft. So just to be clear, women should have the right to vote, not be drafted. Men have the right to vote. Let's throw them to the wolves. Equality in our times. And in the UK, while there was no draft, don't worry, feminism has an answer to that. And they did a white feather campaign. Now, of course, it wasn't just feminists. As I said, there was a divide. It wasn't even just women. There were men who were supporting them because they wanted more people in the war. But they would go around giving these white feathers to shame men into enlisting. And they would put men who were farmers, who were factory workers, who were soldiers on leave, just not in uniform. And for a class that supposedly doesn't have any say, for a class viewed as, less than property, or however you would define it as being less than men, the shame was so severe that the government in England had to actually start giving badges out to factory workers and farmers saying, hey, don't give them white feathers. They're doing their duty for their country. If we sent everyone off to war who worked in farms and factories, we would starve to death. So they're doing their part for our queen and country. Blah, blah, blah. Very fascinating stuff. You talk about voting. So feminists got the right to vote. Anabell, I'd like to ask, did you vote between the ages of 18, 19, and 20?
They did, yes.
Who do you thank for that right to vote?
Excuse me?
Who do you thank for that right to vote that you used when you were 18, 19, and 20?
The suffrage movement.
The suffrage movement. Brilliant. Fantastic movement. You know who else should also fit into your praise? It should be the poor men who were drafted into Vietnam. Yes, in the 1970s, there was this big movement to lower the voting age from 21 to 18. And the chief reason for this, as argued by Senator Ted Kennedy, was these 18, 19, and 20-year-old draftees who were coming back mutilated or dead, who didn't even have a say in their society. So, you know, maybe show them a shout-out. But, of course, the suffrage movement. Absolutely good place to throw your praise. Now, what's interesting is there's approximately 50 years between right to vote between men and women. Approximately. And I have to clarify on paper. If you were black, just because you got the right to vote at one time did not mean you ever got to, you know, use it. However, there was World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam War. All featured male-only drafts of people who couldn't even vote. Feminism. Shouldn't women be going out to vote, or should they give up the right to vote? Oh, no, 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 no. Feminists did not care. Which I'm not saying women should have lost the right to vote, but for an organization that would perpetuate itself as equal, I would like to see a little equity. Now, you brought up equal pay, and I find that interesting. Do you know how the gender wage gap is tabulated in the United States?
Why don't you tell me?
The gender wage gap in the United States is tabulated by taking the full-time, year-round average median income of men compared to the full-time, year-round average median income of women. Can you even begin to process the number of variables that very narrow view is leaving out? It's not comparing work to work. It's not comparing you and I at the same job in the same building, doing the same work with the same anything, you know, like college and so on. It's comparing a CEO. Well, the last thing I was going to bring up was the sexual violence, rape culture, everything's fine with rape in America, which of course is true if we're talking about the prison system. Nobody is batting an eye at individuals being raped by Big Bubba or Big Bertha in prison. But in our society, the legal system and our own morals dictate that rape is wrong. I mean, you have numerous agencies campaigning for, you know, women being raped and it's bad and we have to help them sort of thing, which is true, fair point. But the legal system goes a step further, into territory which actually harms men. In 2012, Eric Holder talked about redefining rape as being any slight penetration of, you know, vaginal, anal, or oral areas, which is great. You know, more penetration, more people can be charged with rape, etc., etc., etc. The problem with that is that it excludes a number of men who could be in the same situation as women but wouldn't legally be raped. Let's talk about that a little bit. So let's say that I roofie Anabell at a party and I have my way with her. Automatically rape, everybody agrees, not even an argument about it. If you reverse those genders, Anabell roofies me at a party, has her way with me, blah, 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 legally not rape. She never penetrated me. OMG girlfriend. And you brought up how some of these questions aren't asked about men's victims, like what were you wearing sort of thing. Well, it's because what constitutes rape for men is really few and far between, legally speaking. They usually chalk it up to just, oh, well, it was just sexual assault, you know, be a man, shake it off. But in New York, for example, 2013, they've expanded the definition to include any contact, unwanted sexual contact, not unwanted sexual penetration. So even, like, I don't know, taken to the extreme, which is New York, so you should just assume people will be shot in the streets for doing it. If a man was to kiss a woman without her permission, they could charge him with rape. Now, of course, New York, that's to the extreme, but legally the door is there to be used. And so, rape culture, education, violence, equal pay, all that stuff. I mean, women make 23 cents less than men for every dollar, even counting in different career choices, but men, over 90%, are the ones who are going to die on the job. So that's all my points with regards to, you know, feminism, all this stuff right there. I'm good.
All right, I'm sure you'll have some great rebuttals from Anabell here in a second. We're going to give you another shot, Chris, because obviously Anabell is going to have 5 seconds to kind of do a rebuttal.
5 seconds?
5 minutes, excuse me.
Hey,
yeah. That's the quickest rebuttal ever. And then I do want to, so we're going to go 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then maybe another 5-minute push, and then we'll have Chris finish off.
All right. I just kind of want to touch upon briefly about what you mentioned in your rebuttal, but I really kind of want to focus on, the whole rape culture thing. So first off, you noted that society doesn't really adhere to men, and they mostly like women and children are first and all of that. Why do you think that is? They feel that way because damsels in distress. So it's the classic situation of women and children can't take care of themselves, women especially, so they have to be escorted first out of danger, so that way men can become the heroes in the situation and follow after them and protect them in any way, shape, or form. In regards to the assigned seat on an airplane, if you're seated next to a child, that makes you a child molester, did I understand that right? Because I'm not really sure.
On a plane and you are sat next to an unaccompanied minor, or an unaccompanied minor sat next to you, you will be asked to move, and if possible you will be swapped with a female passenger because they have a concern you will do something negative to the child.
I wasn't even aware of that. So I personally, like, if you see a male next to a unaccompanied minor, you think, okay, that person either knows each other, or I'm not really sure if your first guess would be sexual predator. In regards to circumcision, I actually agree with you on this. Female genital mutilation, that's not necessarily prevalent in this country, but it's certainly an issue globally. But in regards to circumcision, I personally don't agree with that either. I think that's aggressing violence on a child that is unnecessary and the child cannot consent to. So that I'm actually with you on. In regards to the equality of getting paid, yes, it's more so now in regards to the level that you mentioned because of the Equal Pay Act in 1963 as a result of protesting. So, in regards to the rape culture that you mentioned, the legality of it is despicable, and I'm with you on that. There's some states that don't even consider rape a crime, and a lot of them have changed the term to sexual assault for legislative purposes. And, you know, in some cases it seems to make sense, but it opens the door to interpretation, which mostly benefits the attacker. So like you said, if it is orally, you know, that's not under consent, then in many cases it's not considered rape. So many defenses will try to decrease the charges to a form of aggravated assault or sexual battery, which in turn is less jail time. In regards to, like, who is raped, I do believe that it should be treated equally. You know, it's just that women are more so raped, or at least more reported. According to the CDC, 1 in 5 women have been raped at some time in their lives versus 1 in 71 men. So in regards to jails or penitentiaries, I don't know the specific statistics of it. I'm sure it's higher, but I think that's kind of a different situation. So if you're attempting forced penetration and or alcohol facilitated completed penetration, that's where those statistics come into play. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men. So that needs to be considered when you're talking about, you know, the legal system and rape. So in 2006, it was actually finally considered rape if a woman accuses her husband in a marriage situation, or, you know, the husband accuses the wife. So it wasn't even considered a crime until 2006. So is it more so the latter? Absolutely, because that's more so reported. So unless, you know, it goes unreported, that's what we have to go on. In regards to, like, anal penetration, it's not included in the sexual assault laws for 35 states and is under the legislation of sodomy, which is a misdemeanor. It's surprising, especially considered when men get raped, because they're not treated the same way in regards to the legal system, which I stand against. So if a woman is attacked and penetrated anally instead of vaginally, it's still considered rape in every sense of the definition, but it's not vaginal intercourse, it's sodomy, therefore it's a misdemeanor. So the legal system definitely has a lot to be desired in regards to men and women and, you know, proper prosecution. In regards to rape culture, it's definitely all around us, and the video that you had referred to in your YouTube video does have a list, which you go by every single point to debunk it, which I'm with you in many situations. The list that I have, I think, more applies to, you know, the current society, and I think that's something that we need to focus on, like blaming the victim and trivializing sexual assault, as in saying, like, boys will be boys, or tolerance of sexual harassment, inflating false rape reports, you know, which also goes along the lines of victim blaming, defining manhood as dominant and sexually aggressive, defining womanhood as submissive and sexually passive, pressure on men to score and add notches to their bedposts, assuming not only promiscuous women get raped or prostitutes. I mean, assuming that men don't get raped or even weak men get raped. You know, all of this applies to the rape culture, which needs to be addressed and talked about and stopped. Because, you know, until we actually recognize that there's a problem, it's not going to go away. And blaming feminists for this issue is also not going to make it go away.
Good stuff. All righty. Did you want to add anything else, Anabell, in closing? Because this is, I think this will be the last chance for you to speak, and then he just has the closing statement since you went first.
All right. Well, he mentioned the whole "she was asking for it" vibe, you know, which I'm totally against, and that absolutely applies to rape culture, you know, and assuming that she put herself into that situation. And I think it's different because I support a woman taking full responsibility for her life and her body, and that includes pro-choice and everything along that goes with it. Taking responsibility for your actions and being blamed for being assaulted per those responsibilities, I think, are different things. And one way to really kind of compare it, the first thing that I can think of is actually the George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin case. Yeah. And I agree with you in regards to, you know, whatever the verdict may be, it may be. But I know you, Chris, specifically feel that George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense. That's not the case. All right. Well, many people. I didn't watch that video specifically of you, but many people feel that George Zimmerman acted in self-defense. I'm not going to put my opinion in here for you, but the fact is, there were certain steps that George Zimmerman took in order to get into that situation. Whether or not they had a scuffle or, you know, either way, someone ended up dead. But there were certain steps taken to that situation. Now, should Zimmerman be blamed for those specific steps before having that scuffle? I think that kind of comparison relates to someone getting raped. Would she or he be blamed for, actually she, because, you know, he's not usually taken into account in regards to a rape case. So when you have a man that's raped, you're not going to say, well, he got blackout drunk, he put himself in that situation, he dressed like Magic Mike that night. So that's not the kind of situation that men are put in. It's the kind of situation that women are put in. How short the dress was, how low cut the blouse was, how much she had to drink that night, how many sexual partners she had. Those are things that's put into effect in the legal system when trying to prosecute a rape. It's not the case for men. And bringing up she was asking for it or she put herself into this situation, I think is ridiculous. And I think that's ridiculous for a man or a woman. I don't think either one applies, but it's always the case for the woman to be the victim that this takes place. So I just wanted to note the whole "she was asking for it" thing. So proceed.
Yeah. No, good stuff. All right, Chris, go ahead and close us out.
Okay, she was asking for it. I mentioned that with regards to women hitting men, right? So society will disproportionately just assume that the man did something wrong. And some people will smile. They'll be like, yeah, he probably did something wrong. Even on the ABC show where the social experiment took place, they were giggling after they said it. And I akin this to saying she was asking for it with regards to rape. Nobody giggles about that. Nobody says, oh, yeah, she was totally asking for it, blah, blah, blah. Except, you know, possibly the rapist. Not going to ask his opinion.
Well, I didn't say giggles. I meant, like, in the legal system.
Okay, in the legal system then.
Or
Okay,
in any investigation, like that sort of situation.
all right. Okay, so the legal system and the investigation, they say, well, were you asking for it? Okay, fine, that's bad. Society as a whole just assumes he did something wrong if he's being hit by a woman. So even then, it's disproportionate, and I find it interesting that people would just assume these negative things without an investigation. You brought up the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing. Well, I don't know who's at fault, because I don't know who initiated force, therefore can't know who was in the right to do what. What's interesting with regards to investigations is that they just assumed Zimmerman's story was true. They didn't investigate whether he was drunk or his history of violence. They just assumed Trayvon was the bad guy. So yes, stereotypes and investigations abound in disproportionate measures. We can ask ourselves who gets the better end of that stick, but I think sometimes we'll be shocked at who actually is getting better off. Now, you said about women and children first. That goes back to damsel in distress. Actually, it goes back much further than damsel in distress, because women and children are more important to society than men are. And there's a reason that women come before children, because women are even more important than children. If you want this species to continue down its long road into a Terminator-esque future, you need women. If you have a society with 5 women and 1 man, you're going to be fine. You could work those numbers out to keep your society going if that's the goal. Flip that gender around, 1 woman for every 5 men, and it was nice knowing you. So that would be the inherent reason, evolutionarily speaking, why women and children are the ones put on the boats. I mean, from the movie Titanic, we couldn't even give Jack 5 minutes on the floating wooden thing, for goodness sake. Now, women rape more equals protection for rapists. You were talking about how in our legal system there's some protection for the rapist, etc., so on and so forth. Fair point. There tends to be protection for people. But there also is very disproportionate protection for the victim. Like, there was a story in Duke where there was this exotic dancer, and she accused these like 3 lacrosse players for raping her. Now, nobody knew who she was for months. They didn't give her name. They didn't give anything about her. Of course, these 3 men accused of a crime, not even convicted. The investigation was still going on. Their names were everywhere. The University of Duke talked crap about them. And then it came out that, okay, she was being less than truthful. So there's not exactly equality even in the legal process. Is there protection for rapists? I'm sure there are, but there's also protection for people accusing others of rape. And actually, the men's rights movement has done this campaign called Don't Be That Girl with regards to false rape accusations. And it's following out Don't Be That Guy thing with roofing at parties, you know. Yeah, don't be that guy. And what's interesting is Don't Be That Guy got huge societal approval. People were like, yeah, you know, spreading awareness, etc., etc. Don't Be That Girl was accused of blaming the victim. And we don't want to do that sort of thing in our society, etc., so on and so forth, which is interesting since the victim is supposed to be the one falsely being accused. But because in that situation it's a man and the woman is the one doing the false accusing, well, we can't give the man the benefit of the doubt. So all in all, you talk about the equal pay gap, why, you know, there was that act, it helped people. I don't know about that, but with regards to legality helping men versus women, we have the equal pay gap, you know, what you brought up, we have Violence Against Women Act, God forbid Violence Against Person Act, and we have Title IX in education for gender equality. Now what's interesting about Title IX is it's supposed to make things equal, but it actually just attempts to make things symmetrical, though never gets upset if there's more women than men. And you'll see Title IX in education a lot in athletics. You might have heard about this. Basically, if your university has 60% female students and 40% males, that has to be how your athletics works out. 60% of your athletes need to be women, 40% need to be men. If you can't make those numbers add up, you need to start cutting male teams. Because men disproportionately go towards athletics. Women tend to dominate in theater arts and things like the yearbook organization. And sometimes it's called club. I've been to a few schools. So, yeah. But Title IX will come into these universities and they'll say, hey, you have 30% of your athletes are women and 70% are men. Discrimination and sexism make these numbers add up. And because the school can't pull a gun on these women and say, hey, join gymnastics, which of course I wouldn't say they should, it's initiation of force, they have to cut male teams in order to make the proportions add up, which is just ridiculous. The men have done nothing wrong and they're having bad things happen to them. They're having their sports teams cut. This isn't benefiting women since nothing was stopping them from joining athletics. The women who were in athletics are still there. The women who didn't want to be still aren't. So there's no one even really benefiting from it. All that's benefiting is that feminists get to talk about equality, which they think is symmetry. Not equality of opportunity, just making the numbers add up. Of course, Title IX isn't going to cut women out of yearbook or acting or etc. to make room for more men who clearly didn't want to be there to begin with. And that's our society in a nutshell from the arguments I've presented. While everyone does get screwed over, I'm not going to say nobody does, to ever assert that there's some male privilege or men have a better end of things is complete nonsense. And the reason for this female change, even though feminism touts it as, if you listen to feminism, you think women were the weakest creatures in existence, considering that thousands of years never fought for their own sovereignty. But technological advancement allowed for traditional roles to change. It was no longer needed that a man went out and did the hard labor, the life-deteriorating stuff, since, you know, technology makes it so women can do some/almost all the same jobs as men. So, of course, values would change. But even big-time people like Emily Pankhurst didn't start out wanting the right to vote for people just because they had a vagina. She wanted it for the upper-class women, which is, of course, where feminism started, because those were the first people who benefited from the wealthier aspects of society. And, of course, trickle-down, eventually it encompassed all. But that is society, and it's not about men are better than women. There's no patriarchy. No one is saying women are less than men or considered property, etc. It is just, evolutionarily speaking, we had rudimentary survival terms which got us to where we are today. Technology is helping bridge that gap, and maybe we can enjoy 20 years of real equality of opportunity being judged by the content of our character before Arnold Schwarzenegger comes back in time to murder us while nude. So, that's my thing, what I got going on.
All right, good stuff. Anabell, anything you want to say to rebuttal that?
It's hard to even respond to that, really. I mean, to say that evolution, you know, to say that in this society today, women are not seen as feeble creatures or at least less than men, you know, if you look at the rape culture that we discussed in regards to the legality and how it's prosecuted in the system and how the victim is blamed and how, you know, certain defining of these terms bring about the women are less than men, then, I mean, I don't even know why we're here. So you're not necessarily listening to what I'm saying in regards to how women are in this feminism movement that I stand for. It's in regards to absolute equality. Now, women are equal to men. I truly believe that in regards to, you know, mental status and what you said about the college. I don't agree with that. I don't think that should play into a role. I think there should be men's sports and women's sports, and they should be able to try out for each other. That's my view, and I know a lot of people disagree with that, but I disagree. You know, just to go into the rape culture a little bit more, like to say that women aren't treated differently than men, especially in that situation. I mean, just look at the whole gender heteronormativity. You know, you have boys' toys and you have girls' toys, and they promote this social construct of girls to be princesses and, you know, to look a certain way, and boys to be manlier and, you know, have this dominant state about them, and it damages both sexes. And feminism stands for the equality, and if a boy wants to dress up like a princess and still be heterosexual, that should be okay, and society shouldn't shun that person. So, you know, it all goes into the same kind of situation, you know, of equality, and it perpetuates the societal construct that women are lesser creatures than men, and women are, you know, you could still be feminine and be a feminist, but to promote that structure is damaging the society even more.
All right, good stuff. And I think all of us here believe in freedom for all, obviously. So, you know, I mean, I just wanted to stress that before we get off the show today. So everybody here has got their heart in the right place, and this is what we need. People talking about these ideas and hopefully pushing society and the individual forward. So Chris, Anabell, I want to thank both of you for being on the show today.
Can I just ask Chris one question?
Sure thing, go ahead.
Hey Chris, do you think I am a female gender supremacist?
Totally. Totally. I mean, you said I didn't talk about rape culture, which of course is not true. I even talked about...
I would say you didn't talk about it.
Fine, I didn't address it, but I'm the one who brought up... I talked about the protection for, you know, the accuser, I mean the rapist, which is true, but then I brought up protection for the accuser. I was the one who first introduced the legality of rape in this country as not being quite equitable. So I did address your point. I just didn't agree with you about rape culture. But no, totally gender supremacist. I mean, you talk about if a boy wants to be a princess, that should be okay. Completely agree. But what if a boy wants to be a prince and a woman wants to be a princess? Why is that wrong or damaging?
I'm not saying there's something wrong or damaging. I'm saying that, you know, to expect a boy to force a boy to only play with a prince, and if he wants to be a princess, he shouldn't be looked down upon or called gay. That's what I'm saying. If he wants to be a prince, and if a girl wants to be a princess, I have nothing wrong with that. If a girl wants to fit into the gender roles that society has put on us, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if a girl wants to be a ninja or a samurai or join the army, I fully support that as well. And she shouldn't be looked upon as a psychopath or a supremacist, and he shouldn't be looked at as like a homosexual, you know, as if it's a bad term.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Good stuff. Good stuff, guys. No, hopefully we can have another one of these down the road. You guys up for it maybe in another 3 months or so?
I'm always ready to destroy feminism upon the field of battle.
I'm always ready to destroy assholes.
All right. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much once again for being on the show. This is Voluntary Virtues. I'm Mike Shanklin, and I will be talking to you guys really soon. I have a new video coming out here in about 2 hours, so hopefully you guys can check that out. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Out of 100,000, okay, that's what? 30 times less murder in Somalia than in Detroit. Now, I'm not saying Somalia is...
Well, and I'm proud to say I am not a 0.0000001%er. I think I got that right. What am I?
We have a buy one, get one free deal and 40% off and free shipping. So if you have wanted to donate to our channel before, you just haven't done it, this actually gets you something. So head on over to nonaggression-apparel.com.